In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers set off into the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. They were not tourists. They were not beginners. They were some of the most capable young mountaineers in the country, students and graduates of the Ural Polytechnical Institute. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, brilliant, disciplined, respected by everyone who knew him. The other 8 were just like him, young, experienced, passionate, and ready for anything. Zinaida Kolmogorova, Rustem Slobodin, Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri Krivonishenko, Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, Alexander Kolevatov, Nikola Zolotaryov, and Lyudmila Dubinina, 20 years old, one of the strongest members of the group. 9 people, all of them young, all of them with their whole lives ahead of them. None of them would ever come home. They set off on January 23, 1959. Their destination, a remote peak in the northern Urals called Otorten. The mountains were vast, silent, and deadly cold. Temperatures would drop to minus 30 degrees Celsius. There was no one for hundreds of miles, just snow, darkness, and wind. The early days of the expedition went exactly as planned. They kept detailed diaries. They took photographs. They were in good spirits. Nobody suspected anything was wrong. Nobody had any reason to. By February 1st, they had reached the slopes of a mountain the local Mansi people had named generations ago. A mountain they refused to climb. A mountain they warned outsiders about. In the Mansi language, its name meant one thing: Dead Mountain. The hikers set up their tent on its slope that evening. They ate dinner. They wrote in their diaries. And then, something happened. Something that has never been explained in 65 years. When the rescue team arrived in late February, they found the tent still standing. Inside, sleeping bags, clothing, food, equipment, everything the hikers owned was still there. Their boots, their coats, their supplies. But the tent had been cut open from the inside. Not unzipped. Cut, deliberately, with a knife, through the fabric. Multiple cuts, as if someone inside needed to get out immediately and had no time to use the door. And they had left everything behind. In minus 30-degree temperatures, in the middle of the night, 9 experienced mountaineers had abandoned their tent, their equipment, their boots, and their coats, and walked into the darkness. The footprints told the story. 9 sets of footprints leading away from the tent down the slope toward the tree line. Some were barefoot, some wore only socks, some had a single shoe. And here is the detail that haunts investigators most. They were not running, they were walking, calmly, together, away from their tent, in minus 30 degrees, without shoes. Whatever was behind them, they chose the deadly cold over staying. The forest was dark, silent, impenetrable. Minus 30 degrees with no moonlight and no visibility. 9 people moving barefoot through snow and pine trees in complete darkness. We will never know what they heard, what they saw, what made them prefer freezing to death in the forest over spending one more second inside that tent. But they walked into that darkness together. And none of them ever walked back out. The first bodies were found at the edge of the forest, about a kilometer from the tent. 2 of them were found near the remains of a small fire. They had died of hypothermia. They were barefoot. Bark was found under their fingernails. They had been climbing the nearby pine trees. Branches were broken at height. They were trying to see something, or trying to escape something on the ground below them. Between the forest and the tent, 3 more bodies were found, including Igor Dyatlov himself. Their positions suggested they had tried to crawl back to the tent after whatever happened. They never made it. And then the last 4 bodies were found in May, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine. And what the forensic examination revealed changed everything. One hiker had a catastrophic skull fracture caused by extreme blunt force with no external wounds. 2 others had broken ribs on both sides of their chest. The forensic examiner compared the injuries to high-speed car accident victims. The force required was enormous. and there was not a single mark on the outside of their bodies. No cuts, no bruises, no explanation. And then there was Lyudmila Dubinina. Her tongue was gone. Her eyes were gone. Soft tissue from her face had been removed, cleanly, not by animals. The Soviet investigators examined her carefully. They had no answer. The Soviet investigation lasted months. They interviewed witnesses. They analyzed the bodies. They reviewed every piece of evidence. And their final official conclusion, written in the report, was 4 words: a compelling unknown force. That was it. No suspect, no explanation, no theory. The most powerful government on Earth admitted, "We do not know what happened." They classified the files immediately. They sealed the area around Dyatlov Pass for 3 years. They told the families almost nothing, and they closed the case. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the files were finally released. Researchers, scientists, and investigators from around the world began studying the case. And the theories that emerged over the following decades are as disturbing as the evidence itself. An avalanche, but there was no debris, the tent was still standing, and it explains nothing about the internal injuries. Infrasound, wind passing through the terrain, creating low-frequency sound waves that cause mass panic, hallucinations, and the overwhelming feeling of an invisible presence. A secret Soviet military weapons test. A pressure wave device capable of causing catastrophic internal injuries without leaving external marks, tested in an active military zone, immediately classified, area sealed for 3 years. Every theory explains some things. None of them explains everything. On the last night of their lives, they built a small fire in the darkness. Then they left it. And they walked back toward the tent, back toward whatever they had run from. And they died in the snow before they reached it. Their cameras were recovered at the campsite. Most photographs showed normal expedition scenes, smiling faces, snowy landscapes. The last frame on one roll of film was different. It showed nothing but darkness. And in that darkness, a blurred shape. Unidentified, unexplained. Nobody has ever been able to say what it was. 65 years later, nobody knows. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most thoroughly investigated and completely unsolved mysteries in modern history. 9 people went up that mountain. None came back alive. And whatever they encountered in those final hours, whatever was terrifying enough to make 9 trained mountaineers abandon everything and walk barefoot into deadly cold, died with them in the snow. Some doors once opened cannot be closed. If this kept you up at night, subscribe, because this is just the beginning. What they hid from history, we're bringing it back.